Hello, and this is Delia again, and I'm reading The Vampire Diaries, The Struggle. We are on chapter 14, and I said part 14 a while ago, but that's not what it is. It's chapter 14, part 1. Bonnie shivered as she waited outside the tall Victorian house. The air was frosty this morning, and although it was almost 8 o'clock, the sun had never really come up. The sky was just one dense massed bank of gray, and white clouds created an eerie twilight below. She began to stamp her feet and rub her hands together when the Forbes door opened. Bonnie moved back a little behind the shrubbery that was her hiding place, and watched the family walk to their car. Mr. Forbes was carrying nothing but a camera. Mrs. Forbes had a purse and a folding seat. Daniel Forbes and Caroline's younger brother had another seat. And Bonnie leaned forward, her breath hissing out in satisfaction. Caroline was dressed in jeans and in a heavy sweater, and she was carrying some sort of white drawstring purse, not big enough to hold a small diary. Warmed by triumph, Bonnie waited behind the bush until the car drove away. Then she started for the corner of Thrush Street and Hawthorne Drive. There she is, Aunt Judith on the corner. The car slowed to a halt, and Bonnie slid into the back seat with Elena. She's got a white drawstring purse, she murmured into Elena's ear as Aunt Judith pulled out again. Tingling excitement swept over Elena, and she squeezed Bonnie's hand. Good, she breathed. Now we'll see if she brings it to Mrs. Grimsey's. If not, you tell Meredith it's in the car. Bonnie nodded agreement and squeezed Elena's hand back. They arrived at Mrs. Grimsey just in time to see Caroline going inside with a white bag hanging from her arm. Bonnie and Elena exchanged a look. Now it was up to Elena to see where Caroline left it in the house. I'll get out here too, Miss Gilbert, said Bonnie, as Elena jumped out of the car. She would wait outside with Meredith until Elena could tell them where the bag was. The important thing was not to let Caroline suspect anything unusual. Miss Grimsey, who answered Elena's knock, was the Fells Church librarian. Her house looked almost like a library itself. There were bookcases everywhere and books stacked on the floor. She was also the keeper of Fells Church's historical artifacts, including clothing that had been preserved from the town's earliest days. Just now the house was ringing with young voices, and the bedrooms were full of students in various stages of undress. Miss Grimsey always supervised the costumes for the pageant. Elena was ready to ask to be put in the same room with Caroline, but it wasn't necessary. Mrs. Grimsey was already ushering her in. Caroline stripped down to her fashionable underwear, gave Elena what was undoubtedly meant to be a nonchalant look, but Elena detected the vicious gloating beneath. She kept her eyes on the bundle of clothing Miss Grimsey was picking up off the bed. Here you are, Elena, one of our most nicely preserved pieces, and all authentic too, even the ribbons. We believe this dress belonged to Honoria Fell. Okay, so this is part 1, and we're on to part 2.